I didn't prepare a presentation for who Tony Rinaudo is, but I can make it up and just say what my version of it. So here goes. Here's my version of who you are. When I saw your work, I thought, why is this guy not the Australian of the year, the Australian of the century, or the human being internationally? Who else? Actually, this is a serious question I can start with. Who else has done as much as you have for the planet? Are there other people who are at that level? Can you be, acknowledging and humble, as I know you are, but sincere about that?
Well, I'm not into the hero thing. It very much was. I might have kicked the ball down the road, but the wonderful thing about this work is that it enabled millions of mostly illiterate smallholder farmers, amongst the most vulnerable people in the world, certainly very risk averse, but they saw enough daylight in this that they took a risk with this crazy white guy and tried it. And so, yes, big things have been accomplished, but through the hands of literally millions of smallholder farmers and many colleagues and associates in World Vision, in other organizations that have facilitated the work. So I'll take credit for kicking the ball down the road.
Okay, good. So you seem to have done so much, you and so many people who've worked on this project, and yet there seems to be so much more to do. Sometimes it's a bit overwhelming, but so just for people who've never heard of you, don't know why you're called the Forest Maker, where did it all start, and where did that name come from?
How far back do you want to go?
Well, actually, I want to share something about me, and then see if that inspires something similar or might be quite different. When I was a little boy, I remember watching a documentary, and that was actually at school, a documentary where there were wonderful scenes of nature and beautiful animals, and it was just so awesome and awe-inspiring to see the beauty of nature. And then the bad news was delivered, and it was that a lot of those habitats and the animals were endangered or on the way to becoming extinct. And there I was, maybe 6 or 7, and I went from this feeling of appreciation of beauty and awe then to a mix of anger and confusion and frustration and sadness, and even guilt and shame, because when the bad news came out that the cause of the problem was man, I thought, well, I'm one of them, or I'm not yet. I'm a little boy, but I'm part of the human race, and so I'm part of that problem. And so I thought, we need to do something, but what can we do? And that sort of stuck with me all my life. And when I saw your work, I thought, wow, he's done a lot. And a lot of other people too. So you started it, but
well, that's amazing, and I would agree with you. Starting as a little boy is a good place to start.
Okay.
So I grew up in a beautiful part of Australia, Ovens Valley, and the hills, the trees, the mountain streams were my playground.
Yeah.
But I was also very angry. They were bulldozing the hills. Yeah. Spray drift from the crops were killing the fish in the streams, and I'm sure making people sick. It was DDT and other things.
Yeah.
I was very angry because this was my playground. This was young people's future. Yeah. And for the sake of a few dollars, short-term gain, they were utilizing that environment in such a way as to limit its future potential and damage it, destroy it on the way. So I was very angry. I was angry at the injustice in the world, because even though I had everything I needed, through tally, through reading, I knew children just like me happened to be born elsewhere were going to bed hungry. And that was just unfair. And I thought, well, where's the values? In our valley, they grew tobacco, this noxious weed, and children over there didn't even have bread. So those two things had a big impact on my life, anger and frustration at not being able to change those wrong things. The third thing, though, fortunately for me, my mum had a very strong faith, and it kind of gave me a framework for living that there's more to life than just accumulating lots of wealth.
Yeah.
That we have a duty of care for those less fortunate than ourselves. And this creation, this wonderful world, it's not ours to break. It's on loan. We're here to benefit from it, yes, use it, but benefit in a sustainable way and pass it on. And so that framework, I did the one thing that I felt I had power over. I just said a child's prayer, please use me somehow, somewhere to make a difference. And that was the start of all this trouble that I'm in, forest maker.
That's a nice start. Actually, I just want to share, I grew up in a suburb of Newcastle, well, Lake Macquarie, Newcastle, called Floraville. And it was aptly named at the time. However, unfortunately, very sadly, because my kids will never get to see the bush that I used to play in, and it was beautiful. And, you know, that hurts. It's actually really sad when I think about how beautiful it was, and that now Floraville should be called Houseville. It's still got the same name, but and I think this is the story of progress all around the world.
Degress, not progress.
Yeah, exactly. Well, progress in inverted commas and degress. Yeah, I agree.
Because now I've recently moved to Druin, so 70 kilometres east of Melbourne, and it's like ribbon development, and they're all repeating the same sterile, concreted, asphalted, tin roofed. It's all a repeat of the same. Where's the biodiversity? Where's the living streams? Where's the tree lines?
Yeah.
It breaks your heart, really. What future are we creating for children?
Yeah. Yeah. And this is something that I think, like, people love their children and they want the best for them. And I find quite frustrating that people who actually really do care about the environment get labeled as greenies, rather than it just being normal, and everybody should be should have this within them, because I think it's yeah.
It shouldn't be the exception. It should be. If we just realize that actually we all depend on having a healthy functioning environment. It's not an optional extra. It's not secondary to an economy. It's actually essential to life.
Yeah.
Why is it that we label greenies, so-called greenies, as the weirdos? They're fanatical and so on.
Yeah. Yeah. So when did it? So how did it go from an idea and a prayer to, you know, how can I serve, into the first, or the beginnings of that which grew into a much larger project?
So I came across two books. My dad owned an agricultural machinery business, and he was visiting one of his clients who was also a personal friend. And in this guy's shed, it was off season, so shed was cleared out, and he was a little bit of a wheeler dealer. And he'd been to a library clearing sale and bought a whole trailer load of books, and he just tipped them into the middle of the shed. I liked reading. I walked around, and it's as if they jumped out at me, because there was nothing spectacular about these books. They're dull green, no cover. But one was by the same author, an eccentric guy called Richard St. Barbie Baker. And he was a forester in the British Colonial Service. And the two books that I read were Sahara Conquest and I Planted Trees.
Right.
And I thought, wow, not all adults are out there wrecking the environment. There are people who not only care, they're doing something practical.
Yeah.
And so this gave me hope, and it gave me a little bit of direction. I went on to study agriculture at the University of New South Wales. That's where I met my wife, Liz, who had a similar sense of calling, a sense of purpose to go to Africa and be used in some way. We joined a Christian organization serving in mission and had a placement in Niger Republic, West Africa. Landed there in 1980, so two greenhorns, fairly fresh out of university, no experience, and absolutely floored by the devastation that was in front of us. A land on the point of ecological collapse, barely able to support life. And yet from my reading, I knew within my lifetime, I was 24 years old, this had been a biodiverse dryland forest with wildlife, with springs, with fertile farms in the clearings. 2 short decades, it was more or less a barren, windswept plain.
So what had caused that?
So a number of factors, rapid population growth, a series of droughts, first in the 1960s and then in the 1970s. And when people have nothing else to eat or no income, they cut the remaining trees, sell the fuel wood to be able to buy food. It was a colony of France, and they had very unwise agricultural policies, which more or less replicated the American Dust Bowl experience. They wanted to modernize, introduce steel plows, not necessarily for the benefit of the people, but to generate export crops to benefit France. So a combination of factors. And the result was devastating. A lot of people died in the 1970s famines. I arrived in 1980, and people hadn't fully recovered from that. It was one of the poorest countries in the world. The landscape was highly degraded. The trees never came back, and just vicious cycle of poverty. I walked into a pre-existing reforestation project that the mission had secured some funding from Canadian government. And the idea was the Sahara Desert is moving south. Let's work with the villagers to plant windbreaks and protect their farmland, plus provide a source of fuel wood and poles and so on. Wasn't working. Wasn't working. So people despised it. They thought, how could they possibly expect us to give up agricultural land? This is our food, our income, for these trees. You know, we're hungry today. We can't wait 15 or 20 years.
Makes sense.
And they actually called me the crazy white farmer. So as a young man, very ambitious, very energetic, I quickly became quite discouraged. But I remembered at one point, I remembered that boy's prayer, and I didn't think God made mistakes. And it was a certain day, I was actually delivering a load of tree seedlings to the villagers, knowing full well most would die. It was something like 80 to 90% failure rate. People laughed at me, mocked me behind my back. Waste of time, waste of money. What am I doing here? But I remembered that prayer, and I just shot up another prayer, asking for wisdom and the open arrow, show us what to do. And by this time, I'd already been in the country nearly 2.5 years. And I'd been on this bush track nearly every week, going to the villages, visiting, teaching, trying to get people on board with the program, not making headway. 2.5 years, eyes open, totally blind. And on this day, I'd stopped the vehicle, and I was looking around, and this useless bush, what I thought was a bush, caught my attention, and I walked over to take a closer look. And if you take a close look at the leaf of any plant, it's very distinctive for a species. It's like a signature.
Yes.
In nearly every case, you can tell what species that is by the shape of the leaf. It's not a bush. It's not a weed. That's a tree. And from my crisscrossing of the country, I knew actually there are millions of these. And I bent over, brushed away the sand, and sure enough, there's a stump under them. These suckers are coming up from the stump. That was the answer to my prayer. I'm not fighting the Sahara Desert. I'm not needing multi-million-dollar project or a miracle species of seedling that I can plant and it'll survive everything.
Yeah.
Everything I need is literally at my feet. And so my whole approach shifted from, this is a technical problem, if I just had the right methods and species and money, this would work. No, this is a social and a social issue and beliefs. People believe that these trees were a nuisance to their crops. The policies of the time denied farmers ownership of the trees on their own land. So there was no benefit in looking after them. Someone else could come and take them and you'd have no redress. And so I started a completely different tack, and I thought, if people's false beliefs about the value of trees was causing such negative attitudes and destructive practices, burning, slashing, getting rid of them, then this is where we had to start.
Yeah.
And to this day, 95% of my work involves mindset change. I'm in the business of regreening what people believe about the environment. So how did we go to scale? Initially, there was a terrible drought in 1983. And I had already started working with about 10 farmers in as many villages, just as volunteers, and said, let's treat this as an experiment. I think it'll work. And we'll learn and adapt it as we go. I'll teach you the little I know. You teach me what you know and what you observe. And we'll modify this to meet your needs. Don't do it across the whole farm. People are risk averse, and for good reason. It's an experiment, and we'll do it for 1 year. 3-4 months in, it was working. I was convinced this is going to make all the difference. But people were ridiculing those guys. You're crazy. What are you listening to that white guy for? Don't you know when those trees grow, they'll shade your crop and you won't get any food? And worse than that, they're coming at night and stealing their trees, because everybody needs wood for everything in that society. Wood for cooking, for building, even for burial. You put sticks over the body, and then the dirt. So they're stealing the wood at night. And it would have failed in 1983, but that year the rains failed. And the next year we generated a food for it program. And in a sense, it sounds a little bit wicked. In a sense, we had a captive audience, gradually built up to 100 villages. They needed and wanted the food. And one of the work requirements was to regenerate 40 trees per hectare on your land.
So you bribe them to giving it a go.
Yes, so this is not a good development model, but it actually worked. And it's not the way I work today. That was a specific instance, and there was a dire need, and I could have opted to just feed people, and the problem would recur again and again and again. Or we could work together to try to let's be more resilient next time this happens. So through that a roughly 8-month period of food for work and exposure to this method, and a critical mass said, the guy's crazy, but this didn't do any harm. They actually had a bumper crop, and things spread from there over the next 20 years, mostly by word of mouth, farmer to farmer. It spread to 5 million hectares, 200 million trees across that landscape. So that was then. These days, when I go into a new country and people don't know me, I don't fully know their setting, what species, what's the history, what's the context. I don't know all of that background, but there's one constant through all of the world. Every parent that I met loves their children and wants a better future for their children than the present reality. And in the places I visit, current reality is pretty terrible. And so I ask a series of questions. I'm not shaming people for destroying the environment. I'm not running roughshod and saying, this is what you got to do. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for us in the West, and it's certainly the same there. But I say, what was the environment like when you were a child? And I've done this in over 40 countries. They paint a picture of the Garden of Eden. There were wildlife. The streams were perennial. The soil was fertile. The women collected fuelwood close at hand, and on and on and on. This picture of the Garden of Eden.
Yep.
Second question, what's the environment like today? And they paint a picture of the opposite to what they just described. And people are really suffering. Third question, and this is the clincher. If we continue business as usual, destroying the environment, what does the future hold for our children? And you can hear this hush, because, you know, many may not have been to school or not progressed very far, but they're far from silly. They know full well, and the responses I've received have been devastating. Mr. Tony, it will be hell on earth. It's already bad. If it gets worse, it will be hell. We will have to leave our ancestral lands, everything we know and love, and go to the capital city, and on and on. And so I've really got their attention, and they're scared. But I don't leave them there. That would just be cruel. And I say, would you come on a journey with me? You teach me what you know, and I'll teach what I know. Let's experiment in a small corner, either on someone's farm, or if there's some communal land, we can do this experiment. It worked in Niger, and I list some of the things that I just told you. Do you think we could give it a try here?
Okay.
And what took, I'm nearly finished, what took a decade in Niger to bring that change? Sometimes we're seeing it even in a year. People embrace it.
Wow. So I'm curious, are you using the same techniques, or you have to adapt to the environment you're in, or is what? So I've seen some of your other videos, but I'd like just maybe if you can explain it at a simple level for a simpleton like myself, and just so I can get a better picture of what exactly did you do that caused these little shrubs, which were actually trees, to be able to become healthy again and spread. And is that the same thing that's been done in the various countries, or have you had different approaches based on what they need?
Great question. So the best way to describe it, across vast areas of the land that had been forested in the past, and sometimes we're talking about the distant past as well, there lies what I call an underground forest. Mostly in the form of living tree stumps with the ability to resprout, but also dormant seeds. And some of these seeds are germinating every year. There might be rains, a percentage germinate. Normally, they'll get burnt or trampled or plowed over, or if they get big enough, people desperate for firewood will cut them and take them home. And so the common thread across all the countries I work in is human behavior.
Would it be the animals that the humans have that would eat the small plants as they're coming up, and so we need to keep grazers away from that land while it's coming back as well?
So it's not a biological problem, it's a human problem. And if I can convince people it's in your best interest to work with what nature's trying to do, because if there are no people, the forest would come back. And we've seen this where there's been depopulation in Eastern Europe and other parts of the world, the forest will come back. But human behavior and the animals we bring and the activities we do is suppressing what's happening, what would happen naturally. And so in this meeting, we'll say, well, how are we going to overcome fire? How are we going to overcome continuous grazing? Cutting of these saplings that we want to regrow into trees. And this answer must come from them. If I was to give the answer that say, well, you're rich, give us a fence. You're rich, pay for a fire brigade or whatever. It has to come from them within their context, within their means. We'll assist, but we won't drive it, and we won't flood them with so much from the West that it depends on us. So the kind of assistance, there was a community in Ghana, and fire was the big issue. And first of all, they're saying, well, it's always that bad village over there. They're the culprits. And they point to me, what are you going to do about it? Or what's our government going to do about it? And I say, wait a minute. Governments are big, but they can't suppress fire over the whole country. World Vision's big, but it can't hold your hand forever. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
And so there's this back and forth, and finally they said, well, we've got young people. Could you train them in, firstly, preventing fires, and secondly, when they occur, putting them out? So yes, we can do that. We'll call in the fire service and they'll give that training. From our part as World Vision, we'll give you a few basic things: buckets, shovels, rakes, and a T-shirt. People like a little bit formalized.
They belong, or
yeah. And then there was a little nudge from the government. They said any village that remains fire-free for 3 years, we'll give them the development prize of their choice. Could be a school building, clinic, a well. So there's a great incentive there. And to this day, you know, a decade later, some villages haven't had a single incidence of fire. Now, I digress. I forget what we were originally talking about, but this is the power of working with people.
Yeah, well, this is, I suppose you're answering the question, which was, how have you gone about the reforestation in the first initial project, what exactly was done, and then, but you're answering that, and then in the various other countries and contexts and ecosystems that you've worked in, is the problem the same, or does it differ? And is the solution the same, or does it differ?
So the principles of FMNR itself as a technical approach to reforestation, they're pretty universal. If there's an underground forest, those principles are pretty standard. The big
FMNR sounds like a radio station.
Oh, so sorry. Farmer managed natural regeneration is the technique that we've developed.
Managed natural regeneration. Okay, I can understand that.
Yeah, so that process I described where actually I didn't finish describing. You've got this underground forest of sprouting stems and germinating seeds. Firstly, we select the ones that we want to regrow into trees, because the reality is in most cases, people are still utilizing that land. It's not a national park, so we're not going to create a dense forest in those instances. We do that in other places. So find and select the ones you want to regrow. Very often, especially in the case of a tree stump, they will send up a mass of shoots, 20, 30 stems, all competing for light, water, nutrients, and even space. Let's thin and prune some of the lower branches, and we'll leave maybe 5 stems, because remember, people need this wood. If we only left 1, it'll be gone the next year. Let's leave 5, and we'll take 1 per year, allowing the others to keep growing. Each year, your harvest will be greater. When you get to the last one, the 5th year, it's a medium-sized tree. We recommend just take maybe 1/3 of the branches each year, so that it's not struggling to get up from ground level. So, and then we protect it from threats. Can we agree as a community on a certain set of basic rules? How we will suppress fire, where we will run our livestock so they're not damaging the trees while they're little. They can come in later. What will we do? We want these trees to grow, but people are cutting them. What are the consequences of non-compliance? It has to have a little bit of few teeth in this, not from us, but generated internally. We are so serious about this. There are consequences if you cut our trees down. So,
and that's the community policing that themselves.
Ideally, yes. That's because you want it to last.
Yeah.
You want it to go on whether you're there or not. And so that process that I just described, that's the technical approach of farmer managed natural regeneration. Yeah.
So is this something that you had learned somewhat before you actually started implementing it through studies and other experiences? And how much of it was your own?
I wish. Growing up in Australia, everybody should know when you cut a tree down, it resprouts.
Yep.
And after a bushfire, our gum trees, they're the experts at sprouting all the way up the trunk. So I should have known. For 2.5 years, I struggled with tree planting. 80% mortality rate, a lot of work, high cost of nurseries, carting, digging, planting, protecting. It was that prayer that I mentioned, show us what to do, open our eyes. And it was right there before me the whole time. I should have known.
Yeah.
but I was blinded. In hindsight, I'm actually grateful for that struggle. I'm so passionate, having experienced the pain of failure and pushing uphill compared to working with what the direction that nature is already heading in. I'm glad I had that 2.5 years of struggle and disappointment to the point of wanting to give up and come home, because it's made me even more fiercely evangelistic, if that's the right word. I've become a global campaigner. Get on, listen, can you see this? Look at the results. Because if you do just scratch the surface, how many billions of trees are planted every year? Countries proudly proclaim we planted so many billion trees this year. They never proclaim how many are alive 1 year later. And there's a reason for that.
You know from experience how it ends up.
Yes. So I should have known, but it was a discovery for me. Ironically, there's nothing new about this. You can go back in Europe centuries, and it's called coppicing, the management of the regrowth from a stump. And if you cut them up higher, and you can see this in Europe today, it's called pollarding, and you go along certain avenues, and the trees look like these strange things in the winter. They've been pollarded, which is just another form of what we're doing on farmland.
Right. And so how does a stream start flowing again through the presence of trees growing?
So if you can imagine a landscape that still receives rain, but in these more arid areas, it comes intensively in a short period of time. And you've removed the vegetation, the soil's lost its organic matter and any form of cover. Something like 80% of that water can run off and flood, causing damage downstream, and whatever's left is vulnerable to evaporating. As soon as you have a bit of tree cover that breaks the fall of the rain and builds up soil organic matter and creates cracks in the soil, much of that water starts to soak in. And we've seen dramatic rise in water tables, wells that had dried up, now perennially providing fresh water. And in cases where this work has been done at scale, even streams that were intermittent had become intermittent, starting to flow all year again.
Wonderful.
So it's really, well, it does a lot of things, but in this subject, it's repairing the water cycle. And, you know, drought gets a bad rap. We should be rapping ourselves on the knuckle. We've broken the water cycle, and then we scream when it rains, it's floods, and when it's a dry spell, it's a devastating drought. But if nature's intact, it buffers those extremes so that life is more livable in those periods.
There's something that we have already addressed, and I wonder if there's something else that we can also add to it. So my question here is, how did you move from individual conviction, and so the individual conviction of being aware that we have a duty of responsibility to take care of the earth, to take care of nature, to take care of the planet, to be custodians of the land. How did you go from that individual conviction to inspiring collective action? And I think you've answered it somewhat. I wonder if there's anything else that you can add to how you've been able to inspire people on a larger scale.
So I even from when I was little, there was the sense of duty, and you know, we've been blessed with so much. It wasn't ours to just hoard it. And I was very influenced by both my mum and my dad. Dad was a Rotarian, and every month Rotary magazine would come, and there'd be a centerfold about some story where these Rotarians had gone to a developing country and did these wonderful projects. So there's this sense of service. And Mum used to get these missionary magazines, and there'd always be stories of people, you know, either doing medical work or some other aspect. So it was never a sense, oh, this is a great sacrifice, I'm giving up this luxurious life in Australia. It was just, people do this. But I think I described pretty well the way it went to scale, just not yeah, nobody wants to be blamed for being environmental destroyers, and we see the same thing in Australia.
Yeah.
Farmers could be the greatest environmentalists, but they've been blamed for so many things, and they've done what they're farming with the best of their knowledge and the best intent for many of them, and yet environmentalists throw all this garbage at them. Talk about how not to win friends.
Yeah.
And so I went in, let's listen to them. Why do you do the things that you do? What's the purpose behind cutting the trees down? And you learn all these things. Well, actually, our forefathers didn't used to cut the trees down, but the current rules are we don't own them. And some other ratbag can come at night, cut that tree. If the forester comes in the daytime, he'll find me. And so for a lot of them, it was better to clear all the trees in the first place and have no risk of that. So you start to get into their shoes and understand what drives them. But that process in the workshop that I mentioned, past, present, future questions, is so powerful. I use that every time. And again, it's putting the community you want to influence, it's putting them in the driver's seat, making them ask the hard questions and talk amongst themselves, not wait from the answers to come down from the West. That rarely works.
Well, we can see how well the West has taken forward its progress with its wonderful technology. And so I look at just Australia, for example, the destruction to the natural environment that's occurred since Europeans arrived versus tens of thousands of years of the, Indigenous Australians living here without destroying anything and living in harmony with nature. I would love to see the spreading of awareness that we all should be doing everything we can to create a better world here and now for everyone and leave a better world for future generations. And I think everyone should share this. And that then begs the question, what is a better world? And there's lots of answers to that. But I think the quality of the air people breathe, the quality of the water people drink, and the quality of the soil that produces food must be up there as the top things. I mean, there's so many things that can we live in peace, and is there a good society which is fair? All people's needs are being met, but ultimately, I think up until a certain point, I don't know when the balance tipped, but up until a certain point, people were creating and leaving a better world for the future generations. But I don't think that's happening anymore. I think actually someone who's born now in 2025 doesn't find a better world than someone who was born 50 years ago. And what's it going to be like if we don't change that in another 50 years? Is the quality of water, air, soil going to be such that life can be good, decent, even better? And I'm wondering, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I wouldn't be doing what I do if I thought the future was hopeless.
Yeah.
And in the Australian context, I take courage from people like Charles Massey. I don't know if you've read The Call of the Reed Warbler.
Not yet.
So it's a wonderful book, and he actually starts with Indigenous land management and the wonderful ways in which Aboriginal people manage this land.
Okay.
And he visits a number of Australian farmers practicing one form or other of regenerative agriculture.
Okay.
And so there are shining lights out there that I think don't get enough press. But these are the standard bearers of the future. I think they're leading the way, a better way to be in harmony with nature and still be productive without the negative consequences of toxins and debt and all the other things that go with our modern way of farming. Yeah. So I take courage that, it's good not to listen to too much news. If you only listen to to the mainstream news. You get very depressed very quickly. But
if you care.
Hmm?
If you care.
Yeah, yes, if you care. But there are individuals and organizations really, really trying hard. And I take a lot of courage from that. I take courage from the Niger story. And if you think of the context, if you were trying to influence global restoration, Niger's the last place on earth that you would choose. You set yourself up for failure.
Yeah.
Edge of the Sahara Desert, poorest country, or bottom 10 poorest countries in the world. The government at that time not interested, and they were broke anyway. They couldn't do much. Illiterate, stubborn, resistant people to change. Why on earth would you go there? And yet, these poor, illiterate, vulnerable people affected a change that raced across that country at the rate of 250,000 hectares per year for 20 years. 5 million hectares, 200 million trees.
Wow. And
they did that largely without my knowledge, let alone without my support or the support of others. This was a farmer-generated movement. I take courage from that story. It shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
My question to us in the West is, if these illiterate, vulnerable, risk-averse people achieve that, what are we doing? We're wealthy, we've got knowledge, we've got resources. Why are we cowering under the covers, worried about climate change and biodiversity loss and pollution? Why are we cowering when we have all of this at our disposal and we're saying it's too hard, can't do it? Let it come and attack us while we're sleeping.
Wow. Okay. We're going to get to me asking the question how people can get involved and support this, but not yet. But ultimately, that's what you just said now is encouraging, inspiring, and gives hope. I like that. So I'm wondering what's the connection between taking care? Actually, I'll share my little experience. I went along and participated in a community gardens a few years ago, and I found it extremely therapeutic, maybe more so than any therapy I'd ever been to. And I didn't go along there to get therapy out of it, but it was such a healing experience. And I'm wondering, through your work, have you noticed the connection between human beings caring for nature and that ending up benefiting everyone on multiple levels?
Certainly. What you said a moment ago reminded me, it's a Bible verse, but the leaves of the trees are for the healing of the nations. And I came across that. I was in Rwanda, and the terrible history of Rwanda, the genocide and so on. And pitched against that was this gradual movement of restoration, people coming together to heal a broken land. And those words really did something inside of me. Yes, this work is very, very healing on every possible level. So I described a little bit of what Niger was like before. Drought prone, infertile soils, low productivity, hunger, displacement, conflict over scarce resources. Put trees back into the equation, and they're kind of a foundation piece. In lands that were forested in the past and they've lost their trees, you need to put those trees back in, because everything else hangs on that. You get your water cycle going, the nutrient cycle, the energy cycle. Now for 12 months of the year, instead of just the rainy season, because there are green leaves, sunlight energy is being converted into chemical energy, be it for foods, for fiber, for fuel. Something's happening that wasn't happening before. And it kickstarts the biodiversity and population dynamics.
Yep.
Animals and insects and everything starts to come back. So there's this healing on that side. There was an index, a vegetation index. So it's a measure of how green a landscape is.
Mm-hmm.
And this is referring to the Sahel, so that dry space between the Sahara Desert and the humid tropics of Africa. For every 10% increase in the vegetation index or vegetation cover, there was a 20% drop in armed conflict.
Wow.
And I think the immediate reason is, well, people's needs are being met. More food, more fuel, more fodder, more water. But beyond that, I've read this in sometime a long time ago. Green is a calming color.
Yeah. Well, it's not just a color. Whenever I'm stressed, I haven't. It used to be that a friend of mine, a furry friend with 4 legs, used to take me for a walk every day, and we'd go into the bush, and that was the most healing thing that I would do on a daily basis. And without that, so when I don't spend time in the bush or in nature, don't have that contact, I get stressed and anxiety and all sorts of mental health stuff going on. And all it takes is an hour or half an hour just going for a walk in the bush or it's in touch with nature in some ways.
Yeah. And funny story, I just described, this has real life consequences for life and death situations, conflict, human conflict, but even on a family level. I had a community leader and he said, when I have a big argument with my wife and I'm so angry, I just go out into my trees. And by the time I come back, I've even forgotten what we're arguing about. So it has a calming and it brings peace. Something very wonderful, and as dramatic as the regreening is, and I witnessed this at scale, and I'm so happy to see this restoration of vegetation. Actually, the biggest change that I see is the restoration of hope. And families who couldn't feed their children enough, put nice clothes on them, send them to school, families who tried new things in the past but they'd failed, and they were so fearful of failing again, so discouraged that they wouldn't even try a new thing. When they come across this, literally a solution at your feet, if you'll work with it, it's empowered them to create that future they want for their children. I've now got more food, more resources. I've now got more confidence that I will try investing in this new innovation, or that they'll add to the FMNR itself, to the regeneration. And so I see this great restoration of hope. And you might think, well, so what, Tony? Can you imagine succeeding in a development initiative if the people had no hope? They wouldn't give you the time of day. No. It's going to fail anyway. I'm not going to try. People have hope. They've got this spark, and they'll say, well, I don't fully understand what he's on about, but there's nothing to lose. I'm going to give it a try. It's so powerful. So, this work it touches on every aspect of life.
I was just wondering, sometimes when people open themselves up to trying something new or hope, where does it come from? Sometimes they need to be in a place of desperation before they'll actually get to that point of trying something new. And there's another topic which I was just thinking of asking you about. So clearly there've been advantage to the local economy in Nigeria where the regeneration has taken place. I'm wondering, what about, say, rich countries like Australia, rich as in money richness, and the strong economy? Because some people would say, "Oh, you greenies want you want to stop what that which is causing the economy to be strong." But I'm interested in how you can see that working in a country like Australia or other countries which are the wealthier countries. Well,
it's actually a false statement. We have this sense either we have a healthy environment and go poor, or we have a good economy and wreck the environment. That's a false statement. And crop yields in Niger. So again, the context: poorest country in the world, edge of the Sahara Desert. Crop yields it doubled.
Mm-hmm.
And across that 5 million hectares, every year, without fertilizer, irrigation, or better seed, Nigerian farmers grow at least 500,000 tons of grain just by working with nature instead of against it. And gross incomes in total have increased by about $900 million, helping 4.5 million people by working with nature. So it's false to say it's either or.
Yeah.
In the Australian context, already there would be farmers. They're not strictly doing FMNR in the sense that they follow those 5 or so steps that I outlined, but many farmers are practicing natural regeneration along their creek lines, on the rocky outcrops, in certain corners of paddocks. Why? Well, they want to stop erosion. Some want the biodiversity to come back. Some perhaps for pollination vectors and so on, reduce wind speeds, reduce temperatures. So it is happening in a form that I would say is contextually appropriate to our way of farming. Here, there's not it's probably not profitable for most farmers to grow trees to sell firewood. It is in Africa. There's not many of our native trees that would produce a high value fruit or something that would justify this. But I would say that there are economic benefits through bringing in biodiversity, through reducing temperatures. You're creating more favorable microclimate, better soils, and reducing your dependency on this heroin addiction to inputs. If the trees are doing the fertilizing for you, if they're reducing temperatures, there's less need for so much irrigation, and so on and so on. It's reducing this heroin addiction that we've got to throw money at it when nature's got a solution.
So I wonder, are they still doing that because they're not desperate enough?
Well, if you read that book, Call of the Reed Warbler, Charles says it's usually a crisis that brings people to evaluate their situation. And some opt to leave the farm altogether. Others, they start to look around and see what other farmers are doing. And he said, often it's a financial crisis, and that's all too common. It could be a health crisis partly because of the chemicals that we're using. And he mentioned a third thing, drought. He had a property that had been in the family for some time, and he was actually he wrote the Bible on merino wool growing. So he's well-known, well-respected farmer. He nearly lost his farm, and he decided when he optioned it to retain the house in a certain area. It's still a commercial farm, but that nearly broke him. Then he went on this journey around Australia, and he researched the regenerative agricultural movement. But you're absolutely right. It took that crisis. And he said for many of the people he interviewed, it was a crisis that made them see life differently.
I wonder how we could get to people before they have to get to that point and help them wake up early. So, well, because we all benefit from it. The more people start taking care of nature and the land.
Yeah, well, it's funny, this thing, conservation agriculture, where you do minimum tillage, you leave the trash, the residue on top. It wasn't a thing several decades ago. But in time, a few early adopters who would have been ridiculed and laughed at, but also watched, they started experimenting, and the results speak for themselves. Now it's very, very common. And I think, yes, it may take some people to have that crisis point and then change, but let's remember others are watching. And in the long run, it just makes so much sense. And we kick ourselves and say, why didn't I do this earlier?
Yeah. I had a little bit of dabbling. It wasn't as successful as yours, unfortunately. In India a couple of years ago, I was at a friend's a friend's place there who he's got a small farm, and they grow their own food. And I said, well, what if you try? Because he said that they were going through some of the driest period that they've ever experienced before. And I said, well, I've heard about this way of growing your crops where you can actually use a lot less water. You get the vegetation, you leave that over the land, you don't dig, and so it's sort of like permaculture, or leaving some vegetation on top. And I couldn't understand the language. That was Bengali, but they're all laughing at me and about me. But my friend said, okay, what I'll let you do is you can do this little experiment. So it was about probably 20 square meters or so. Just do a little experiment there, and we'll compare that to the plot next to it and see how it goes. So I thought, oh yeah, that's a smart thing to do. And I was really into it. I was so proud of this little tiny micro farm plot that I was playing with. But then what happened? Well, I was only there for 2 months, and I left, and I went back about a year later, and they'd abandoned the whole thing. So
yeah,
it was like,
it happens, yeah. But don't give up. I taught a lot more than just FMNR. I taught composting and mulching and so many different things. And for the most part, they just laughed at me. Yeah. My last visit to Niger was in 2018 or 19. And they were so proudly taking me through the farms and showing me how they used the mulch and what a difference it made. And even composting, it's a big ask. The wells there can be 60 meters deep, and there's no pump. And so you've got to be a really serious guy to be drawing that water and making compost. But they would, because the plant spacing in dry areas is quite wide, they would make this compost, and instead of broadcasting it, they would microdose each plant. And measurable increase in yield. But they were doing all this stuff that I thought I'd just wasted my time. So hang in there. Yep. I also taught mulching in Myanmar, and they thought this was a rubbish idea, and they sort of did it on a small scale just to humor me, and then quickly forgot about it. But surrounding on the borders of a lot of farms there, they grow some kind of sugar palm. They harvest the sugar, and you have to climb up the palm tree and tap it. Yep. And the guy was up there tapping the tree one day, and he looked down, and the only spot that was bright green was where they'd mulched.
Wow.
He comes down the tree and races to the village. Hey, come and look at this. So, yeah, people have to see for themselves. It's not good enough just to be told very often.
Did they start implementing up?
Well, I don't know. A lot of things have happened in Myanmar since then, and I lost the contact. But I like to think people would remember that, and some would practice it.
Yeah. I want to change topic, look at something different now. Okay. I think that when we die, if someone, okay, let's look at this in two different ways. So people either believe in God or they don't. Okay. My personal conviction is that, let's say someone doesn't believe in God. All right, we'll play with that idea. Okay, they get to the end of their life, and they look back on what they've done in their life, and they can reflect on, what was my life about? What was the sense to it? What was the purpose to it? What was the meaning of my life? And I think that someone who's contributed a lot, and they've actually done a lot to help other people and help even the planet, can feel proud and content and acknowledge, yeah, well done, I did a good job. I can die peacefully and rest in peace now. Whereas if someone were to get to the end of their days and really think about what's the point in life, and if they hadn't done that good, and what I mean by that is doing their best to make the world a better place and leave the world a better place for future generations, they might be stuck with a kind of a wish that they'd done something sooner, wish that they'd done something which did contribute to making the world a better place. Now, then let's play with the idea, okay, God exists, which I happen to know or believe, I suppose we could say. And right, one thing that isn't often mentioned in many of the world's main religions is that God wants us to take care of creation. And so when we meet the maker of all of the creation, he, if we use the male pronoun as is generally used for God, might say, you didn't take care of my creation. You were part of, maybe you didn't do any specific damage deliberately, but you were part of something which did cause damage, and you didn't do anything to avoid that from happening. So I'm pretty unhappy with you about that. So that's just a simple way of looking at, I think what I'm trying to say is the spiritual connection, and I even believe it's a duty, and I understand that you have the same or a similar kind of a view on that.
Definitely. Coming as a Christian and believing the scriptures, there's so many scriptures that point to a God who created this beautiful, amazing, intricate, interconnected world for our benefit.
Yeah.
And he put us here as stewards. And that word has been misinterpreted. People think that we have the right to go and conquer it and destroy it and exploit it. Stewardship means I was a steward in a country show once, and I had to lead the prize bull around the ring. Can you imagine if I'd abused that bull? I would have lost my job straight away. We're to be stewards. Yes, utilize it. Yes, benefit from it. But take care of it for today and for future generations. And there's scriptures around the time of creation. They're having a great big party up there. They're so happy to see these things unfold, and they're praising God, and they're singing, and they're shouting for joy. And if I look at the state of the world today, I don't hear too many angels shouting for joy at what's happening to the world. And I think it must break God's heart. He loves this creation. In the Christian worldview, he upholds it and maintains it to this day. It must mean something to him. And here we are trashing it as if there's no tomorrow. So, I forget the original question, but I feel very strongly as a Christian that we do have a duty to care for this unique, wonderful place that we live on.
Yeah.
And sadly, there's a verse in Revelation. There's a specific verse that says, "I will judge those who destroy the earth." We should shudder at that.
Yeah, I'll say. What I mean, why is that not in the commandments? I mean, thou shalt not damage the planet.
Well, you could read in, "Thou shalt love thy neighbor." Well, by actively destroying the environment, we're destroying the means of a dignified life of our neighbor. Climate change, exploiting the earth, polluting it. That's not loving our neighbor. So it doesn't specifically say thou shalt care for the environment, but by default, if you love your neighbor, you're not going to destroy the place that they live in.
Yeah. So, some people I've spoken to say, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with the environment," and I'm like, "Oh, where to start with helping those kind of people who say that open their eyes?" Is it too big?
Which planet are they living on? I guess we we live in our air-conditioned artificial bubble.
Mm.
But try making a living the way the world's majority people do from the environment, and there's something very, very wrong. It's not producing, it's not reliable year on year, because so many things have changed, and we have this false sense of security because everything's in the supermarket. But there will be a day when that won't be so certain. For every 1 degree increase in temperature, crop yields, and this is an average figure across a number of crops, crop yields decline by about 10%. Animal production decreases because they're stressed, they don't take in as much food, and an animal not eating is going to produce less meat, milk, and eggs. Now, people have this false complacency. It's going to take so many decades before it rises 1 degree or so on, which that's on shaky ground. I think it's happening faster than we think. But take what happened in 2009, and Melbourne had this heat spike. I'd never heard of a heat spike before. And in one day, the heat record was broken. I think it was it 36 degrees, or never before attained temperature in Melbourne. In my garden, the maize crop, it burnt standing up, it shriveled standing. Railway lines buckled. Commercial fruits desiccated on the tree. One day's heat spike, forget the averages. So those people, if they don't know it now, or they refuse to acknowledge it now, all of us, it's coming if we don't act very, very quickly.
So what advice would you have for people who would like to get involved or contribute in some way to the solution? I've got two parts to this question. The first is those who feel powerless, or they feel small, and that nothing they can do can make a difference.
So I'd say don't take on all of the world's problems on your shoulders. That's too much for anyone, and it will break you. It broke me as a teenager. I was so angry, so frustrated. But what's that one thing? All of us have got a special purpose on Earth, I believe. What's that one passion that's latent inside of you? Can you start with yourself? Be the change that you want to see. Start with yourself. Start small in your home. If it's environment that you're worried about, can you alter your purchasing so that it's more environmentally friendly? Can you use renewable energy? How do you transport? All these things. There's little things that we can do, and then gain confidence in that. Be informed, read, learn. Can you join a group? And if there's no group, can you form one? Because there's strength in numbers. But I'm talking too much. The key thing is what can you do? Start small and go from there. That would be a concise answer.
Okay. So, well, as you know, I've created this podcast, and I'll be creating an online community to share ideas. And I'd also like to ask you, Tony, how can people support your project or mission, or whatever is the best way of terming it?
Thank you. So this method is low cost, but it's not no cost. And World Vision's really pulled out all the stops. We want to take this to scale globally. We actually have an ambition to see 1 billion hectares of degraded land restored worldwide.
Wow.
Through our own programs, but through influencing other organizations and governments. And so if people want to give to this, and I'll give you the written link afterwards for you to post, FMNR, so this farmer managed thing, FMNR hub, HUB.com. Okay. And there's a donate button there. And
FMNR, Farmer Managed Natural Regeneration
Hub, HUB. So FMNR
FMNR.
hub, but I'll write it down for you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do a shameless ad.
Yes, please do.
Not shameless because all the royalties go to this work. I don't get any money out of this. If you want to know more about it, the history, the impact, and where it's heading in the future, this is my autobiography, and all the royalties go to that same donate button for World Vision projects around the world. So this is called the Forest Underground.
The Forest Underground, excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tony. So can I ask specifically how that money ends up benefiting everyone ultimately, but the local communities where the work is done?
So in say Africa, we work in 100 countries around the world, but take Africa as an example. We'll be in a community at their invitation, and they'll have specific needs, and World Vision will work with them to address those needs. But when we come in with this sort of project and we do a workshop that's past, present, future, and training in the actual method, let's plan together how we will roll this out in our community. How will we protect the trees? So that happens in the framework of a project, and there'll be staff. They'll need transport to get to the communities. It takes a little bit of money to run these workshops and then to follow up with them. We'll need to liaise with the government people, invite them to the workshops, but also convince them that this is something that they could be promoting as well. So overall, compared to major development projects, the cost is relatively low, but it still costs something to engage with people, to walk alongside them, and then to release this thing. Sometimes we use radio and so on. So there's different things that the money goes into. Excellent.
So people can actually donate directly to the FMNR project?
Yes, through that donate button. It's specifically for these projects.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for asking.
Thank you, Tony. And well, I'd like to, I don't know that I'm qualified to do so, but on behalf of the planet, I'd like to thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'm qualified too. I'm one of the beings of this planet, so I just happen to be saying it. I'm sure the planet thanks you.
Thank you. And could I just add one thing? Because you asked me what can people do as individuals? And I feel too many, particularly young people, they're overwhelmed. They feel it's hopeless. It's too late to change. And I came across this story. It's attributed to I forgot. Just bear with me. Augustine. Whether he said this or not, it's in line with the kind of teaching that he gave. And he said, because people have lost hope, he said, hope has two beautiful daughters. And the name of the first daughter is anger. And remember, you said as a little boy, you were angry. I was angry. The name of the first daughter is anger. Anger at the way things are, the wrong things in the world. But the name of the second daughter is courage. Courage to get up and change those wrong things. And it really struck me. I think a lot of us feel, some people are just lucky. Hope fell out of the sky and they're optimistic people and things go their way. No, you make hope happen by the actions you take. And thanks be to God, he called me to do that work in Niger, and people benefited. But if I never went, if I never saw that ridiculous tree stump, there'd be no story. It had to be this action. And so I just want to encourage people, never despise the day of small beginnings. Every little step is a start. And when you take that one step, you can always see where the next foot should go. So, yeah, take courage, but start.
Yes. You know, one thing I think of also is that people might think, oh, well, I'm just one person. What can one person do? Well, you're just one person. And look what you've done. It's pretty impressive. And if you'd had that same mentality, well, I'm just one person, what can I do? Instead of, well, I'll just do what I can do now. The 1 billion hectares of trees or regeneration wouldn't happen.
That's right. I know for an individual, that's an impossible number. It's a stupid number.
Yeah.
However, one person can tell a second person, and today we're magnified through podcasts, through internet, through radio, and so on. One person can actually touch millions of people.
Yes.
And within them, a certain percentage might take that and run with it. Never put yourself down to say, well, I'm only one person, can't make any difference. There's no excuse, actually, especially today.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Tony. You're my hero and a great inspiration. I wanted to interview as the first person on the podcast, so thank you very much for graciously accepting and sharing your story and your wisdom and hope and inspiration.
Thank you, Andrew. It's a great pleasure and an honor to be the first to be interviewed by you, and very enjoyable.